The episode begins with Ash heading to the Kalos region. Ash looks at his partner Pikachu and smiles, recalling the recent events. As he runs forward, he mentions to his friend how grateful he is that they've been able to meet many people across their journey and looks forward to seeing where their next adventure takes them. Ash feels content that he's been able to meet Red, save Mewtwo, unlock the new Mega Charizard Z form, and stop Giovanni once and for all. He then asks Pikachu, wondering what Karrye will show them. Meanwhile, two wormholes appear in the Kalos region. Kukui notices how a young boy and young girl are both appearing from them. As they enter, Kukui begins to panic and wonders if these two individuals pose a threat. He then looks at the red wormhole, noticing how another unidentified being is slowly emerging. Kukui then notifies Professor Oak, and we then skip to the wormholes revealing the two trainers. A young girl wearing blue and an Indigo League hairpin lands on the floor, and the young boy wearing red also does the same. The girl asks the boy where they are, and the boy responds saying that he is unsure. Both trainers look up to the sky, noticing the wormholes are both active, and they decide to try and walk back. The young boy sends forth a Pokemon and mentions its name being Kilowattrel. He then flies up to see if it's possible to go back through the wormhole, however it is not. The girl notices that the area that they are in looks very similar to the region that the boy once visited. He then mentions that the region they are in is the Kalos region. The pair of trainers begin to walk and come across a huge landmark with a tower. The girl mentions that she does not recall seeing this place before, however the boy begins to frown, recalling that he has heard about this landmark. He tells his friend that they should always be on guard. Entering the building, the boy notices how there are statues of the Pokémon Lucario, including one statue showing a Mega Lucario. The girl asks the boy, wondering if this landmark is a special place to worship this Pokémon. As they enter, they come across a girl who has their back to them. Karrye is then shown. She states that she is happy that they have arrived, unaware that these two individuals are not who she expected it to be. After turning around, Karrye reveals a new attire, showing her wearing a belt that houses multiple Mega Stones. She then says, "Oh, you're not Ash." The boy and girl both look at each other, saying Ash's name, confused as to who this person is. Meanwhile, Ash finally arrives in the Kalos region. He tells Pikachu that he feels like they haven't been to Kalos for a long time and looks forward to seeing Karrye again. He then recalls his adventures, and we see continuity flashbacks of Ash's Kalos adventure with his fellow companions being Serena, Clement and Bonnie. He also recalls the calamity that occurred in Lumio City and remembers the final battle with how every friend he met along the way helped him overcome Lysander and Team Flare. He then looks up at the sun, and he recalls his most recent encounter with the Zygarde army, wondering if he will ever meet the Pokemon again. Ash then looks at his Mega Glove and has a brief flashback of Greninja's Water Shuriken variants and Mega Charizard Z. Pikachu looks up at his beloved trainer, however Ash turns his head and smiles, asking his partner if they should continue forward to meet Karrye. The night comes around and we see Ash camp out with his Pokemon. He prepares food for them and summons forward the Pokemon from their Pokeballs. We then see Hawlucha, Sceptile, Pidgeot, Greninja and Lucario. Each Pokemon looks happy to be with one another as they eat their meals. Ash then speaks to them, saying that he hopes that they all enjoy, and tells him that they need to get a good rest as Karrye is expecting them to be all in top shape. He then speaks to himself, hoping that Charizard is okay. Ash then tells Greninja that he hopes he can perfect the awakened Shuriken phenomenon, whilst looking at his other Pokemon too, hoping that they all prosper in strength. We then see a brief flashback of Ash collecting the Pokeballs for his Pokemon from Professor Oak. Oak tells Ash to take these specific Pokemon with him, and that Karrye will ask him to visit the Tower of Mastery as she has something to show him. He tells Ash that he will make sure Charizard recovers to full health, whilst also studying the new Mega Charizard Z form. Ash collects his Pokeballs and wonders why these specific Pokemon have all been chosen. Oak then tells Ash that Kukui also sent him a message, but he will investigate that later as Charizard's health is a priority. As the flashback ends, Ash then looks at his Mega Glove before looking at the sky again. He then talks to himself, saying the words Mega Evolution. Back at the Tower of Mastery, the boy and girl become startled and they ask who Karrye is. Karrye says she poses no threat to them and she was expecting someone called Ash to visit her. She then asks them to introduce themselves. The pair tells Karrye that they were transported via a wormhole. One minute they were with their friends, and then the next, they were transported here. Karrye is puzzled as she has not heard of the Paldea region before, and the pair show off their Rotom phones. Both phones have no signal on them. Karrye mentions that it may be best for the pair to stay the night, as tomorrow then she'll be able to get help from Ash to learn more about wormholes and hopefully help them both get back home safely. Both trainers thank Karrye and introduce themselves. The girl states that her name is Liko, and the boy introduces himself as Roy. The next day is here, and Ash arrives at the Tower of Mastery. He walks into the building calling Karrye's name. As he enters, he approaches a room where he sees Karrye talking to both Liko and Roy. Ash is confused and wonders who these two trainers are. Karrye tells Ash that she's happy he finally arrived, and Pikachu smiles at her Lucario. Roy then looks at Ash and begins to speak to himself, stating that he can feel a huge aura emitting from this trainer. He is concerned at how someone can have such a huge wave. Liko looks at Pikachu and calls him cute, but instantly regrets saying the word. However, Pikachu smiles back at her. Liko is then surprised and mentions to Pikachu that she knows doesn't like being called cute. Ash then introduces himself, stating that he's from Pallet Town, and also introduces uses his partner Pokemon Pikachu. Liko and Roy then introduce themselves and begin to explain what happened when they got transported to the region. Roy mentions how the wormhole they came out of isn't currently letting them go back in, and it has now disappeared. He then proceeds to show Ash an image from his Rotom phone. Ash then comments on how he recently encountered a similar occurrence of this with another trainer from a different timeline and wonders if the same has happened again. Liko begins to think to herself, and she asks Ash if he has ever heard of the Paldea region, to which he responds with a puzzled face. Roy then mentions how this Kalos feels different to the one he has visited before, but is unsure if this is the same Kalos region or if they have been warped into a different timeline entirely. As the gang discusses, Liko's Rotom phone begins to transmit a signal, and a pixelated voice is heard. Liko and Roy both look at their phone, and another individual begins to speak to them. A girl with purple hair at a computer asks the pair if they're okay. Liko and Roy both say the name Dot, and Ash repeats the name confused. Dot begins to explain that just before the pair got warped in, she managed to ensure that their tracking systems were still enabled on their phones. She then goes on to explain that both Liko and Roy have been warped into a dimension that may feel the same as theirs, but holds different elements. She's trying to pinpoint if the wormhole actually transports them into a different timeline, or if they are just simply in the Kalos region. She also mentions that she is picking up a huge reading from a potential threat that appears to be in front of them. However, as the pair try to explain to Dot about Ash, the phone cuts off. Ash then questions what happened, and Liko talks to Roy asking if they should confront Ash about what Dot told them. Karrye fears that there may be tension between everyone, and tells them all to calm down. She begins to pinpoint the timeline of events, and states that everyone should work together to try and solve the issue. Roy then mentions to Liko that he agrees with Karrye. Ash then receives a call from Kukui, stating that yesterday 2 more wormholes transported 2 identified beings into Kalos. Ash responds by showing Kukui, Liko and Roy, and questions who they are. Liko begins to explain that she and Roy are both from the Rising Bolt Tacklers, a group of adventurers who are currently aiming to stop a calamity approaching the world. Ash is puzzled, as he is unaware of this supposed unprecedented event. Roy urges Kukui to help them get back as soon as they can, to help their friends. Kukui says that he has examined the wormholes and states that they appear to be different from the usual. Due to their nature, it seems that the only way for them to go back is for a specific criteria to be complete that will unlock the key for them to be able to go home. Liko and Roy begin to worry, and Ash tells them to stay calm as he believes that everything will be okay. Despite just meeting, he will help them as he did with Red before. Professor Oak then calls notifying Ash that Kukui alerted him of 2 wormholes the night he collected his Pokemon. He then notices Liko and Roy and mentions that it's best that they are kept safe until they learn how to help them go back home. As the call ends, Karrye tells the group that all should be fine, and proceeds to tell Ash the reason as to why he's here. Karrye opens a box and shows a chained belt with various Megastones attached to it. Ash and Roy both gasp and say at the same time the words "so many Megastones." Roy then turns his head at Ash asking if he can Mega Evolve Pokemon, and he replies by sending forward his Lucario. Roy then sends forward his own Lucario, revealing the shiny sparkles. Ash is excited to see the shiny counterpart of this Pokemon, and both Lucarios end up greeting each other by communicating via aura. Roy mentions he too can use aura, and explains how he was able to sense Ash when he arrived. Ash speaks to himself saying the words "another aura user." Karrye then interrupts, stating that she has now become the successor of Mega Evolution and has been following her grandfather's footsteps in learning all about Mega Evolution and perfecting the art. She has collected multiple Megastones and also discovered some new Megastones along the way. At the current time, her goal is to locate the new Megastone for Lucario. She shows an image on her Rotom phone, and Liko questions if this Megastone belongs to the Pokemon. Karrye replies stating that the Megastone will allow Lucario to Mega Evolve into a new form of Mega Evolution, and she is still studying it alongside other unidentified Megastones. Both Lucarios stare at the Megastone, curious as to what revelation could come from it. Karrye then tells Ash that she made him a new belt, and she wants him to try out these new Megastones with his Pokemon, and passes the belt to him. We then see a shot of Ash's Pokemon having the respective Megastones equipped to them. Greninja does not get a Megastone, and Karrye apologizes to the Pokemon. Ash asks if the Mega Belt looks too much on him, however the gang reassure him that he looks just fine. Karrye then states that it's a perfect fit for the world champion. Liko repeats these words, and Ash responds by saying he became the world champion not long ago. Roy begins to frown with excitement, asking Ash if he is a good battler. Ash then looks at Roy and reaffirms that he never backs down from a battle. Karrye then interrupts, saying that this should be the perfect opportunity for both sides to battle each other and let Ash try out the new Megastones. Both sides agree. Liko then tells Roy to make sure to give it their best and to also be on guard, seeing as they now know about Ash's status. Ash talks to Pikachu, saying that even though he doesn't know too much about the duo, he can't let their guard down. The same night, Liko asks Roy if they will ever be able to return home. Roy says he's unsure, however he vows that he will always stick together with her to make sure that they can. Ash then looks up at the sky with Pikachu, curious as to how the battle will go tomorrow. As the night ends, Karrye looks at a photo of her grandfather Gherkin, hoping that she can make him proud. She then leaves the room and we see a frame of a mysterious box on the table. Back in the Alola region, Kukui begins to study information about Liko and Roy. He mentions how he is unable to understand how and why that they have been warped here. He then loads data files about them that he gathered from their Rotom phones. After looking at their files, Kukui is shocked and mentions how both trainers have 2 specific Pokemon on their team. The next day arrives and the 3 trainers prepare for their battle outside on the battle court. Roy summons forward his killer Watchel to watch from the side, and Liko also does the same by sending forward her other Pokemon, being Hatterene. Karrye then mentions that the battle will be a double format, with Liko and Roy both being able to rotate between 3 Pokemon each. Ash looks at his Pokeballs and tells his Pokemon from within that they will do their best to embrace the power of Mega Evolution. Roy then tells Liko to give it their all, and to show Ash how strong they are together in battle. Liko nods acknowledging this statement. The battle begins. Ash starts by choosing Hawlucha and Pikachu, with Liko and Roy sending forward their first pair of Pokemon. Liko summons forward a Fire Soldier-like Pokemon, with Roy sending forward his Shiny Lucario. Ash is unaware of the Pokemon Liko has chosen, and is unable to find any data on his Rotom phone. Liko explains that the Pokemon she has chosen is called Armarouge, and she has raised it from a young cadet into a fearsome knight. Armarouge kneels acknowledging his trainer. Ash compliments their bond, and starts by commanding Pikachu to use a quick attack on the Pokemon. Pikachu begins to accelerate forward, and Liko is surprised at how fast the electric mouse is. She then tells Armarouge to block the attack. Pikachu bounces backwards, and Roy commands Lucario to use Metal Claw. Ash then tells Hawlucha to use Karate Chop and defend Pikachu. Both fighting types clash. Ash then thanks Hawlucha for helping Pikachu. Liko then tells Armarouge to use Armor Cannon, and Hawlucha leaps backwards evading the attack. Pikachu then uses Iron Tail, landing a hit on Armarouge. Liko states that Pikachu is so fast, and Roy mentions that it reminds him of someone called Cap. Ash is puzzled as to who Cap is. Karrye then shouts Ash's name and points at the Mega Bell. Ash responds to her call and begins to Mega Evolve Hawlucha. Everyone is amazed to see the new Mega Evolution on Ash's team. Hawlucha is over the moon and flexes its muscles using its signature pose. Armarouge and Lucario both look at each other and then nod their heads in agreement. Overwhelmed with excitement, Ash commands Hawlucha to use High Jump Kick, and both Liko and Roy command their Pokemon to dodge. Hawlucha ends up missing and crashes into the ground, taking huge recoil damage. Ash gasps and remembers that despite Hawlucha now being Mega Evolved, he has to stay calm and not rush. Hawlucha then uses X-Scissor on Lucario, catching it off guard, with Pikachu then using Electro Web trapping the Pokemon. Liko then commands Armarouge to use Expanding Force to help free Lucario. Roy then tells Liko that they should show Ash who they really are, and both trainers command their Pokemon to use Aura Sphere. Ash gasps, and he notices that despite being Mega Evolved, the damage from High Jump Kick has caught up on Hawlucha, and before it can use Flying Press, the attacks hit their Pokemon. Hawlucha is then unable to battle, reverting back into its usual state. Liko and Roy both congratulate each other, with Karrye saying that it's a shame Hawlucha didn't get enough time to shine. Ash tells Hawlucha that it fought well, and he will ensure that they will both train again to master the Mega Evolution. Hawlucha nods at Ash before being returned to his Pokeball. Pikachu is still in good fighting spirit. Ash then sends forward his next Pokemon, being Pidgeot. Killer Watchel growls, acknowledging another fellow flying type Pokemon. Pidgeot soars high into the sky before landing to the ground, causing a huge gust of wind to form. Liko notices how incredibly strong Pidgeot is, with Ash stating that this was one of the first Pokemon he caught. The battle continues. Ash tells Pikachu to jump on Pidgeot's back, and the pair begin to fly high. Liko commands Armarouge to use a flamethrower, with the duo evading the attack. Pikachu then leaps off Pidgeot's back and uses a quick attack, driving Armarouge into the ground. A huge formation of rocks is lifted from the floor. Roy then tells Lucario to use Close Combat to fire the rocks at Pidgeot. Pidgeot evades the attack. Liko looks and is unable to see Pikachu anywhere. Ash then screams now, with Pidgeot using an Aerial Ace and Pikachu using another Iron Tail. A combination of attacks make Armarouge fly back, causing it to faint and unable to battle. Ash jumps, complimenting the teamwork between his Pokemon. Liko thanks Armarouge for his efforts and returns him into his Pokeball. Ash tells the pair that he's having fun, with both trainers echoing these words. Karrye says the battle is exhilarating and can't wait to see what will happen next. Liko then sends forward her next Pokemon, asking it for its strength. Revealed from the Pokeball is a humanoid Lynx Pokemon with green fur covering most of its body. Karrye mentions that she has never seen this Pokemon before, and Liko introduces her partner Pokemon Meowscarada to the battle. Liko goes on to say that she and Meowscarada have been through a lot on their journey, and the Pokemon is her most reliable companion. Ash acknowledges this, and then proceeds to Mega Evolve his Pidgeot. Roy then decides to return his Lucario, and Ash is puzzled. He then sends forward his next Pokemon, revealing a huge red crocodile-like Pokemon with fire exerting from it. A small orange ghost bird sits on its nose. Roy then mentions that this Pokemon is also his partner, being Skeledirge. He too iterates that he and this Pokemon have gone through a lot on their journey. Pikachu sparks electricity and the battle resumes. Pidgeot flies high and begins to use Wing Attack. Skeledirge uses Stomping Tantrum, and Liko commands Meowscarada to use Acrobatics. Combining her speed with the attack, Meowscarada begins to kick the rocks from Stomping Tantrum. Ash tells Pikachu to use Iron Tail to deflect them, however one shard ends up striking Pidgeot. Liko then tells her Pokemon to use Flower Trick, causing Pidgeot to fall to the ground. Ash begins to worry, and Pikachu begins to accelerate forward with a quick attack, pushing Meowscarada away. Roy commands Skeledirge to use Flamethrower, and Pidgeot manages to lift itself up and fly high. Ash then mentions how he knows nothing about the Pokemon that Liko and Roy have, and fears that this will become a problem. He then commands Pidgeot to use Brave Bird on Meowscarada, accelerating with incredible speed. Karina mentions that this is the power of Mega Pidgeot. Roy begins to sweat and tells Liko to do something quick. Liko begins to worry and Roy panics, telling Skeledirge to use its tail to push Meowscarada out of the way. Pidgeot strikes and hits Skeledirge, taking small recoil damage. Pikachu then uses Thunderbolt on Meowscarada. Both Pokemon are on the ground with their trainers asking them if they're okay. Ash then tells Pikachu to jump on Pidgeot's back again, and Roy tells Skeledirge to use Discharming Voice. Both Pidgeot and Pikachu freeze, and Liko commands Meowscarada to use Sucker Punch on Pikachu. Pikachu is then hit. Pidgeot screams and Ash tells his Pokemon to use Giga Impact. As the Pokemon charges the attack, Liko and Roy both look at each other and say the word right in unison. As Pidgeot charges forward, Roy tells Skeledirge to use Torch Song to slow the speed of the Mega Evolution. Liko then screams now, and Meowscarada strikes Pidgeot. Ash screams his Pokemon's name, and a smoke screen is formed. As the smoke subsides, Pidgeot is on the floor and reverts back into its usual state. Ash is disappointed with himself as this is the second Mega Evolution on his team that's fainted. However, Karina tells Ash to remember that a trainer and Pokemon must be in sync to execute Mega Evolution effectively. Despite being Mega Evolved, Ash and his Pokemon have not adapted to these new changes just yet. Ash feels reassured and thanks Pidgeot for his efforts before returning it into his Pokeball. Liko then congratulates Meowscarada as the attack she was able to use was Thunder Punch. Roy then mentions that Cap's training benefited them in this moment. Ash tells the pair that he is amazed by their strength, with both trainers noticing that Ash is a tough cookie for sure. Ash then grins with the pair looking concerned. He then tosses forward his next Pokeball, revealing Sceptile. Roy then shouts Sceptile's name before the Pokemon places a twig into its mouth. He then turns his head and both him and Ash nod together. Ash then Mega Evolves Sceptile into Mega Sceptile. He then speaks to himself saying the words "let's see if this works, Sawyer." The battle resumes. Roy commands Skeledirge to use Stomping Tantrum, and Sceptile returns the attack with Leaf Storm. Meowscarada then tries to land an Acrobatics on Sceptile, however Pikachu defends his friend with Iron Tail. Ash then commands Sceptile to use Acrobatics as well, clashing with Meowscarada in the process. Roy fears that despite Sceptile being a Grass Dragon type, the Pokemon won't be easy to fall. Pikachu then uses Thunderbolt, and Meowscarada uses Flower Trick. Ash then tells Sceptile to use Leaf Blade, which hits Meowscarada. Liko is worried, and Skeledirge counters with a Torch Song. However, Sceptile then uses Dragon Claw to slice the attack in half. Pikachu grins as it acknowledges that Sceptile learned the new move thanks to Ash asking Sawyer to help him teach it to his own Sceptile after their battle in the Kalos League. Sceptile stands firm, recognizing its new power. Meanwhile, Kukui notices the red wormhole is beginning to warp another unidentified being into the timeline. Suddenly he loses signal and is unable to see a visualization of the supposed being. The unidentified being lands in Pallet Town and begins to wonder where he is. Kukui begins to contact Oak about this occurrence and warns him to tell Ash's mother Delia that something is approaching them. Back at the battle, Liko commands Meowscarada to then use Flower Trick, with Roy commanding another Torch Song. Ash then commands Pikachu to use Electro Web as a trampoline. Elevating itself into the sky, Ash then tells Sceptile to use Leaf Storm. The power of the attack allows Pikachu to lift itself even higher into the sky. Liko and Roy are both shocked, and Ash then commands Pikachu to use the same combination against Zygarde, being Quick Attack and Iron Tail. With the power of this combination working, Pikachu lands a huge hit on Meowscarada, and Ash commands Sceptile to use Acrobatics on the Pokemon, causing it to faint. Ash jumps with joy, however Roy brings forward a crystal ball that begins to shine. Ash is confused and thinks Roy is about to use Mega Evolution. However, Roy begins to use the gimmick and throw it towards Skeledirge. Large crystals emerge and a huge fire chandelier appears above the Pokemon. Ash begins to sweat, unsure as to what is going on, and tells Pikachu to watch out. Roy commands Skeledirge to use Flamethrower. The attack is much larger compared to usual, and it catches Pikachu, causing it to get severely damaged. Liko returns her Pokemon, and Ash asks Pikachu if he's okay. Pikachu is badly wounded and struggles to get up. Ash then tells Pikachu to come back. Liko is shocked to know that Pikachu was able to withstand Skeledirge's attack, and Ash asks what happened to the Pokemon. Roy begins to explain that the gimmick he used is called a Terra Orb, and this allows Pokemon to terrestrialize, either gaining increased power or a new type. Pikachu's eyes begin to light up after hearing this. Ash is blown away by the newly revealed gimmick. Liko then tells Roy she is down to her last Pokemon, knowing that if she loses loses, then the rest will be up to him. She then grabs her last Pokeball, holding it close to her heart. Liko then tosses the Pokeball forward. Revealed is a small turtle Pokemon with a huge pendant-like body. She then says, "Let's go Pakugo." Liko introduces her final Pokemon named Terapagos, who is also nicknamed Pakugo. She explains that this Pokemon was first a pendant passed down throughout the generations of her family. It is the key to her family's lineage, and also a legendary Pokemon that has aided her throughout her journey. Karrye takes an instant liking to Pakugo and wonders if it can Mega Evolve. Liko responds saying that it has different forms, however right now its ultimate form is something that she is unable to execute just at free will. Roy tells Liko to be careful. Ash then sends forward his next Pokemon, being Lucario. The battle resumes. Ash tells Lucario to use Double Team, with Sceptile using Acrobatics. Skeledirge continues to use its Terra Power and uses Torch Song on Lucario. Sceptile then uses Dragon Claw, however Pakugo defends their side with Protect. Ash grinds his teeth as he notices that despite being small, Pakugo for sure is a mighty Pokemon. Liko then tells Pakugo to use Rapid Spin, which hits both Sceptile and Lucario. Sceptile is then caught off guard and Skeledirge uses Flamethrower. Ash tells Sceptile to use Leaf Storm to counter. Both attacks fire forward and Roy shouts to boost Skeledirge's drive. The power of the attack intensifies and Sceptile is then scorched. Ash shouts Sceptile's name, and during this time, Lucario is left vulnerable, being hit by Pakugo's ancient power. Karina's Lucario looks at Ash's, feeling concerned. Roy congratulates Skeledirge and thanks Pakugo for helping him. Sceptile reverts back to its usual state, and Ash tells the Pokemon he did a great job before returning it back into his Pokeball. Ash then notices that he only has one Mega Evolution left in his arsenal, being Lucario. However, he doesn't want to rush as he knows Roy has his own as well. Ash turns to Pikachu asking if he can resume, to which his fellow partner jumps forward. The battle continues. Pakugo starts by using Ancient Power and Pikachu uses Quick Attack. Lucario then charges an Aura Sphere and fires it at Skeledirge. However, the attack does nothing. Skeledirge then retaliates using Flamethrower, but Pikachu uses Thunderbolt to erase the attack. Ash begins to think on how he can eliminate Skeledirge as its power levels have intensified. Liko tells Pakugo to use Protect, however Lucario's Bullet Punch lands on the Pokemon. Liko is worried and Pakugo begins to get angry. Suddenly the Pokemon begins to transform. The turtle begins to change shape with fur coming out of its body and the pendant shell increasing in size, showing emblems that represent different Pokemon types. A small light flashes in front of everyone and Liko and Roy both smile. She then mentions that Pakugo is now in its terrestrial form. Ash is impressed but also concerned, as he has now noticed that Pakugo is in a new state of power. Liko commands Pakugo to use a move called Terra Starstorm. Suddenly, shards of light begin to fire from the sky, and Ash is shocked. Roy then tells Skeledirge to use Torch Song. Both attacks fire in unison, and Pikachu is frozen. Ash tells his Pikachu to use Quick Attack to evade the attacks. Lucario then uses Double Team. Liko and Roy are speechless as they have never seen two Pokemon evade attacks before with ease. However, Torch Song catches up on Lucario, causing the Pokemon to take great damage. Pikachu looks back at its friend and ends up getting hit by Pakugo's move. A small smoke screen is formed and both Liko and Roy believe they have won. However, once the smoke screen has faded, they see Lucario push forward with the move Bullet Punch and Pikachu uses Thunderbolt. Both moves land a hit on Skeledirge and Roy screams his partner's name. The Pokemon then falls to the ground with the terrestrialization state disappearing. Skeledirge is unable to battle. Lucario and Pikachu are both starting to feel exhausted, and Ash notices that Pakugo is hardly breaking a sweat in the battle. Roy returns Skeledirge, thanking it for his hard work. Ash turns his head to look at the corridor as he senses something, and Karina asks if he's okay. He then turns his head again and looks at Roy. He also senses that Roy will be sending forward his own Lucario, a duel that was inevitable to happen. Liko looks at Roy as she knows that he can Mega Evolve this Pokemon. Pakugo floats happily, waiting patiently. Roy then throws his Pokeball into the air, reintroducing his shiny Lucario to the field. Both Lucarios glare at each other, and Ash and Roy both grin at each other knowing their next move. Both trainers proceed to Mega Evolve their Pokemon. The battle continues. Pakugo uses Ancient Power, and Ash tells Pikachu to climb the rocks and use Iron Tail, landing damage on the legendary Pokemon. Both Lucarios use Aura Sphere, causing an explosion. Ash tells Lucario to use Double Team, and Roy tells Lucario to use Close Combat to destroy the clones. Pikachu then uses Thunderbolt, catching Lucario off guard. Liko looks at Roy and sees he's beginning to feel the pressure. She then tells Pakugo to use Protect. Roy's Lucario then fires Flash Cannon, landing damage on Pikachu. Ash's Lucario looks back at Pikachu, noted his friend is severely tired. Ash is concerned as Pikachu is barely able to pick itself up. Liko then commands Pakugo to use Terra Starstorm. However, Ash then tells Lucario to use multiple Aura Spheres to defend Pikachu from the incoming strikes. Pikachu worries Lucario won't be able to withstand all of the incoming attacks. Roy is blown away by Lucario's persistent and willpower, noticing something special about this Pokemon. Liko remains focused, and suddenly a blue aura begins to emit from Ash's Lucario. Ash begins to radiate blue aura, and the size of Lucario's Aura Spheres begin to increase. Huge Aura Spheres begin to surround the battlefield, with one firing towards Roy's Lucario. Liko is astonished by this, questioning what power Ash and his Pokemon truly possess. The Aura Sphere strikes with both Shiny Lucario and Pakugo being on the floor. Both Liko and Roy are shocked, however Lucario picks itself up and begins to rate its own shiny aura. Roy then begins to glow. Ash is surprised by this and shouts at Roy, saying to him that both of them have to give it their all. Roy acknowledges this and Liko smiles. Both trainers command their Pokemon to fire Aura Sphere. During this time, Karina notices that a blue light begins to shine from the corridor and proceeds to head down the hallway to investigate. Ash asks Pikachu if he's okay to continue, to which he says yes. Both Lucarios clash, and Pakugo begins to charge another Terra Starstorm. However, this time something different about the attack is shown, and the Pokemon begins to radiate with a huge light around it. Liko looks surprised, however Ash is oblivious to this, and tells Pikachu to show them their true power. Ash lifts his arm up to reveal his Z Power Ring, Ash throws his hat into the air, and Pikachu grabs onto it, and the pair prepare to use the 10 million volt Thunderbolt Z move. The pair of trainers are frozen, as they are unsure what is to come. As the Z move is executed, Liko screams Pakugo's name. The Pokemon then begins to transform again. As both attacks land, a massive explosion erupts on the battlefield. Pakugo reveals itself, but this time in a different form. Various gems surround the Pokemon, and Liko is shocked to know that Pakugo has reached its true power again, being its stellar form. Ash gasps, as he thought he hit the Pokemon. However, it turns out that the strike ended up landing on Roy's Lucario instead. Roy is shocked, and his Lucario falls to the ground, reverting back into its usual state. Everyone looks at Pakugo's final form, and Liko and Roy both question how this form has come to be, seeing as they haven't seen it since the last time in Raquaza. Ash questions what Raquaza is and looks at Pikachu. Pikachu turns around smiling, however then collapses to the floor. Due to heavy exhaustion, the Pokemon was not able to continue forward. Both Roy and Ash thank their Pokemon before returning them. Ash places Pikachu on the side, thanking him and telling him to have a good rest. All trainers are now down to their final Pokemon. Roy looks at Ash and thanks him for such a thrilling battle. The similarities they all share shows how amazing Pokemon battles truly are. Liko looks at Roy feeling concerned. Ash states that he is happy that he has met both the trainers and sends forward his final Pokemon being Greninja. Karina arrives back in the room and notices the mysterious boxes radiating blue energy. She then opens the box and Smiles notices that she has found something that she was looking for before. Roy then looks at Liko and nods. He then tosses forward a brown and golden coloured Pokeball, saying you're up. As the sparkles disappear, a Dragonite Pokemon is revealed. Roy's final Pokemon is a shiny black Rayquaza. Ash is in disbelief and questions Roy how he caught this Pokemon. Roy begins to explain that Rayquaza is a Pokemon that he met during his adventures and actually used to be a Pokemon that belonged to Liko's great-great-grandfather. After gaining the Pokemon's approval, Rayquaza decided to travel alongside Roy. He is still earning the Pokemon's trust to this day. Liko looks at Rayquaza, noticing how majestic the Pokemon is. Pakugo also looks at his fellow friend. Greninja looks closely at Rayquaza and recalls how this isn't the first time he has had to battle the legendary Pokemon. Ash mentions to his Pokemon that this is the final challenge, and both Lucario and Greninja nod to this. Ash then tells Greninja it's time, and the pair begin to execute the Bond phenomenon. Liko and Roy gasp as they have never seen a Greninja with a different appearance before. Roy speaks to himself asking just who exactly is Ash. Karrye then returns and asks Ash to take an item from her. She reveals that this is the Greninja, a Mega Stone that can be used on Greninja. Ash questions if this will be able to work seeing as Greninja is already in the Ash Greninja state. Karrye tells him to try it out. Roy looks at Ash and tells him that he knows the battle is approaching the end and both sides should go all out. He then brings forward his Mega Ring again and tells Rayquaza he wants him to be able to trust him. He then begins to Mega Evolve the legendary Pokémon. Ash then tells Greninja that he too wants him to be able to trust the new power, and then proceeds to Mega Evolve Greninja. The battle has now reached its climax, with Ash using Mega Ash Greninja and Mega Lucario, with Liko using Stellar Form Pakugo, and Roy using Mega Rayquaza. The battle continues and Liko commands Pakugo to use Terra Starstorm. Roy tells Rayquaza to use Dragon Pulse. Lucario uses Aura Sphere and Greninja uses Water Shuriken. Greninja vanishes instantly and Ash is shocked by this Pokemon's speed. The Water Shuriken fires and lands a hit on Rayquaza. Terra Starstorm fires and lands significant damage on Lucario. Roy then tells Rayquaza to use Draco Meteor and Pakugo uses Protect to defend the trainers from the incoming meteors. Ash sweats and tells Lucario to use Aura Sphere whilst Greninja uses Ice Beam. Pakugo then charges forward with Ancient Power, and Lucario is unaware of the attack. Lucario falls to one knee, and Pakugo is in front of it. Liko tells Pakugo to use Rapid Spin, however Ash commands Lucario to quickly use Reversal. Both attacks clash, and it leads to a double knockout. Both Ash and Liko are shocked, however the battle isn't over. Mega Rayquaza roars in the sky, and Greninja looks closely at the Pokemon. Ash can't understand how Greninja has suddenly adapted to this new power, and tells Greninja that they have to give it their all in order to win. Liko looks at Roy knowing that he would try his best. Roy then tells Rayquaza that this is the last chance for them to win the battle. Despite both trainers not adapting to the new Mega Evolution states of their Pokemon, they are both keen to see who will come out on top. Roy screams telling Rayquaza to use Dragon Ascent, and Liko shouts at Roy asking what he is doing. Ash begins to focus with Greninja communicating with his Pokemon to use the ultimate Water Shuriken. He tells Greninja that he knows it's a risky move, but it's the only way they'll be able to overcome Mega Rayquaza. As Greninja charges the attack, Karrye shouts at Ash. Rocks begin to lift from the floor, and with the combination of the power of both Pokemon, everyone begins to fear that this may have gotten out of hand. However, it's too late. Rayquaza fires forward and Greninja launches the attack. Both Ash and Roy scream, and the attacks collide. A gigantic smokescreen is formed, with both trainers keen to see who has won. As the smokescreen subsides, Ash and Roy look to notice that neither Pokemon are on the ground. They both look up to see that Mega Evolution energy surrounds them both, with both Pokemon just staring at each other. They question what is going on, and then suddenly both Pokemon revert back to their usual states. They then land to the floor, and Karrye smiles acknowledging that both Pokemon have appreciated each other's strength, and for the safety of others, they wish to call it evens. Roy and Ash both smile happy that their Pokemon have come to this agreement. Suddenly, both Greninja and Rayquaza begin to emit Mega Evolution energy from their Mega Stones. This then fires towards the sky, forming a new wormhole to be formed, allowing a portal to be open. Liko asks Roy if it's time to go home, and Roy begins to feel sad as he wanted to stay longer and learn more about Ash and his Pokemon. Ash and Karina are also sad, however Ash then states that he is happy that he got to meet the pair. It seems the universe brought them together for a reason, and no matter where they are, they will always remember each other and how they brought happiness to their own worlds with their Pokemon. He says they will always be friends. The pair then return their Pokemon and board on Rayquaza before being lifted into the sky towards the wormhole. Liko and Roy begin to tear up, thanking Ash for their encounter. Ash also begins to shed tears, knowing that he has made more new friends and wishing them the best. He says he hopes they can meet again someday and battle again. The pair wave at Ash, and the portal begins to close. Karina tells Ash to keep the Mega Stones and Mega Bell that he used today, and to practice more with his Pokemon to learn even more about Mega Evolution. Meanwhile, back at Pallet Town, Ash's mother Delia receives a call from Professor Oak. Oak tries to warn Delia about a potential threat, however there is a knock at the door. As Delia opens the door, she meets a tall man of the adult age who wears a cap and has Pokeballs equipped to his belt. The man politely greets her, asking where he is. Delia is puzzled, and she mentions to him that he appears to resemble closely to her son. She asks the man for his name, and he responds by saying that his name is Satoshi.